I sucked so hard. Looking at this picture actually makes me cringe. That was one of the first software teams I led, and I was not good at it at all. The thing is, I started out as a freelance coder 5 years ago, and I was really good at it. And then at one point, they asked me to lead a team, and I sucked. And that was 2 years ago, and now I'm decent. We ship multiple software projects for clients. I built 2 software teams in my own company, and these are the 10 lessons I've learned along the way. Understanding user experience, or UX, is crucial. And as a developer, I never really appreciated good UX work. Just a quick sample of what is the minimal UX. And things don't really need to be fancy. What we're talking here is a functional specification, nothing pretty. So just starting from a scribble on a sheet of paper. Here I just take a photo and throw it into Figma. It's just that. Buttons are just boxes. Text fields are just boxes with some text inside. And just this minimal specification really helps the developer get going. I just wanted to drop this here to show you that things don't need to be fancy or complicated in order to have a big impact. In my experience, many project managers skip out on this. I actually had to design a workflow of UX myself because nobody else was paying attention to it. So here's a tip. Even if you aren't a UX designer, having a grasp of UX can make a huge difference, especially as a PM. Next up, demos are vital, folks. I'm an extrovert and I love showing people what I do. But remember, not everybody in your team might feel the same way. So I make it a point to ask for demos. What we use is just a simple Loom video, and that's for every team member in the marketing team. They are doing 1 video per day where they describe the current progress of what they achieved in that day. And this is roughly how it looks. They're just quickly talking about what they did. They show roughly in their calendar what they worked on, and maybe some results in a Google Doc or in a Google spreadsheet. For the software teams, we ask for weekly demos, because in a weekly demo, the software team describe more the features that they worked on. Because usually workflows in software teams are more combined and it take a bit longer. But for all the marketing things, that's what we work on a daily video basis. It keeps everybody in sync and really helps them identify any roadblocks early on. And most importantly, it shows the team how other devs approach the problem. So everybody gets better. Okay, moving on. As a PM, my role has shifted to more resolving roadblocks and providing resources. That includes the stuff we all love to hate, like writing agendas, sending out meeting notes. So if you're transitioning, be prepared to handle the lazy work too. And also something that I had to embrace was now being on the manager schedule. Maybe you know this blog post. It's from Paul Graham, one of the guys who founded Y Combinator. He has a very nice essay. You can Google for it, make a schedule, manager schedule. So as a maker, as a software developer, I was able to focus for a whole day. And now suddenly I'm on a manager schedule, meaning my day is more cluttered and it's very hard to find focus. So usually a day in my work day looks like this, where I run on the manager schedule, meaning I really don't have much focus to concentrate on something for 1 or 2 hours because there are just so many meetings in between. And one of the premise of this article is that even if you have a meeting in, let's say, 2 hours from now, it is very hard to focus because you already start to worry about this. Now, there is one hack I'm using. I try to, as you see here, I try to do content. So I'm focusing on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays on content. Mondays and Fridays is more for manager stuff. So that's my hack, my way out. So on a given day, I know exactly what I'm working on, and I have more longer stretches of time to focus on things. And here's the big one: learn to say no. It might be tough, but sometimes it's necessary to say no to additional features or other managers asking for resources. As a developer, I had to guard my own time. Someone asking me, hey, can you help me with my code? Hey, can you review my merge request? Hey, can you clean up that? Hey, can you track your time? And all these things, you can usually just block them out and move them to the end of the day. So guarding my own time was important as a developer. Now, as a project manager, I need to guard other people's time. I cannot just switch off the Slack chat. I needed to be in there and needed to talk to the team. And then sometimes other managers would come and ask me for things. And I needed to guard my team's time. cannot have them be interfered by outside requests, because we needed to ship this, we need to make this deadline. So this perspective really shifted for me. Now I have to see more the whole and not just my own. All right, let's talk about deadlines. Contrary to my developer days, I love deadlines now. They're a great tool to get everybody to focus and avoid overcomplicating things. Previously, I would think, oh, that's a cool feature, yeah, let's do it. And now I think, does it help us reach the deadline? If not, we don't do it. One practical example. Let's say you have 3 months to finish some admin panel in your app. The developer says, hey, let's do something like this. Some React component, it's gonna be easy. And you as a PM say, yes, let's do it. The developer will for sure use those 3 months in order to make this one thing. However, later on, you might figure out that this thing is actually only used maybe once, maybe twice. Some admin goes in and adjusts something in the admin panel, and then they're done. They save, they never look at it again. How about you would have used that kind of style? It would be very fast to make, you could focus on much more important features, and the admins might not even care. There is something called the Parkinson law. A task, it spans into its boundaries. So meaning, if you have 3 months for something, you're going to use the 3 months. If you have a short time, let's say a deadline next week, you're probably going to make that deadline by sacrificing, of course, quality and scope, but you're going to make that deadline. And usually for the clients, the deadline is most important. Testing matters a lot. And there is one thing many developers reject: testing parity. What does testing parity mean? It's getting the dev's environment to match the client's environment. Once I got this right, we could be sure that a successful test on the machines of the developers also worked on the computers of the clients. Story time. I once had a client with a lot of very sensitive data, gigabytes of data, and those were all mingled with customer data, with personalized information. And that kind of data, of course, cannot leave their servers. It cannot get outside their IT systems. And we totally understand that. However, it was very difficult to anonymize that data. Now, if we could have spent, let's say, 3 months to write a script that takes these gigabytes of data and anonymizes that, we decided not to do that. And that had a ripple effect until later in the project, where we were not really able to completely test just like the client would test. So by not doing this investment of spending 3 months into an anonymizing tool, we had a huge problem later on in the project. And that's the lesson I took away from that testing parity is mega important, and that really can decide how a project goes in the long run. And this is just having this one thing done differently would have really changed that project. So I encourage you to always make sure that you have testing parity. Whatever the developers test is also testable by the PMs and also by the product owners on the client side, because only then they can be sure that when they sign off on the feature, it actually works. Next, habits. Yes, they can slip easily. There's only one thing that makes me follow up on things: systems. Habits are only formed if you repeatedly do them. And that's where systems come in. As a PM, I now understand that I need to build systems for my whole team. Once they follow, they can all build a habit together. What we always try to do, let's say we want to go to the gym. Simplest analogy. We get motivated, we go to the gym, and then for some reason something happens and we fall back. And we don't do anything, and then one point someone asks us, hey, have you gone to the gym? You should go. Okay, let's go again. Maybe some more motivation, we go more to the gym, and then maybe we stick for some time, but then there's a vacation, and then we fall back and we don't go to the gym anymore. So this is a usual cycle that people usually have. Summer comes and they want to have a beach body, and then they go back a bit to the gym, and then something else happens, they get injured, and then they fall back. So this is a totally normal cycle, and I think a lot of us have been through that. Now this basically happens with your team as well. Let's say you want to get the team to do weekly demos. I said, let's say weekly demo videos, or show up on meetings on time. Okay, so you remind them, they show up on time, and then they fall back. And this is the same cycle. So it might work for some time and then they fall back. And this is something which is human. We do that. But the problem with the team is now suddenly this gets compounded. Say 2 people do this together and then they fall back again. And then, so now you have the effect that it is not just one person, it is the whole team. Maybe this person sticks around longer, but then you have a whole team falling back on bad habits. This can be a problem, let's say, when it comes to software testing and writing tests, and then suddenly nobody's doing this. There is a deadline coming here, people know this, they need to reach this point here, and then suddenly they want to speed things up, and everybody is not writing tests anymore. Now, compare this to a person with systems. Let's say your system of going to the gym is every morning you just take on the gym shoes, and then you just do something. Yeah, you might fall back, but every morning you have the system pulling you back. Like every morning you start with the shoes next to your bed. It's the first thing you take them on. And then it's much easier to pull you back up. And then it's very likely that you stick to this routine and be there in the long run. It's the same with a team, where a system would allow you to always have this trigger that makes people do a certain thing. And even though they fall back down, they will get pulled back up. And then it just takes very few iterations, and suddenly the whole team does something, and then it feels effortless. Here's something I didn't expect. Developers get stuck a lot. Story time. When I started as a freelancer 5 years ago, I worked with a new framework in a new industry, and I really didn't know much, and I got stuck a lot. So there were days where I wouldn't make any progress. For 8 hours, I would sit down, I would try to solve something, and I couldn't. And then eventually I reached out to a team member. Now, of course, there's a question, maybe I should have reached out earlier. And that's the point where a good manager would actually figure that out and see when someone is stuck. Are they stuck because they're working on a very technical problem, it's very hard to solve, or are they stuck because they just don't know something that another team member knows? Most of the time, they're not stuck because the problem is complex. They're stuck because they're missing a piece of the puzzle. Pair them up with another dev, and it often does wonders. Fancy tech is cool, but only for learning purposes. In the real world, simplicity wins. Simple is stable, stable makes the customer happy. And now, as a PM, I always look for ways to simplify. And by simple, I mean starting with a stack. Starting with the technology, with the foundation of everything. Of course, that only applies if you are able to start a project from scratch, and if you're not thrown into a project that already exists, mind you. Now, one quick schematic about this. Starting from scratch means you can choose the stack, you can choose what kind of complexity you want to bring in right early on. I'm a fan of monolithic applications, meaning there is just a framework and a database, and the browser works with the framework and hits the database. Very simple. Some other people, they're really fans of fancy front ends. Let's say React or Vue.js, anything where the state is detached. It looks like this. You have a browser and then some front end components, and usually then in order to get this to work, you need an API in between. Could be REST could be GraphQL. Let's say GraphQL in this case. Suddenly you have two states to maintain. The browser has a certain state and then the server has a state. And this whole thing becomes more complex. Suddenly you need testing for the JavaScript part, and you also need testing for the GraphQL layer. And then in any case, of course, you always need testing for the server. So everything gets more complex. And I really like to keep things simple, especially when we start off building something. One good example is this, a generated admin interface. Let's say you make a new database table called settings. And imagine these settings are never ever used. And maybe just once by some super admin putting in some small data. You can generate this thing here in 1 hour. But building that admin panel with the whole stack would easily take a week. And now you choose, was it worth it to spend that week? So that's what I mean. Keep it simple, because that's where you're more agile, you have more time for more important things. Last but not least, be patient. Projects take time, especially as they scale. To me, patience feels a bit like the movie Inception. As a developer, things feel fast because you're in the flow, you're concentrated on one thing. And then once you're a PM, you see multiple people being concentrated, but you're not. And so the whole thing feels much slower. And that's a mindset shift I had to experience, and just trying to figure out where are the inefficiencies, how can I move these people to the right position. Yeah, that definitely feels much slower than grinding on a feature. It's a different kind of fun, and I started to appreciate it. One bonus point for you. PMs usually don't care about this, but if you do, you run through open doors. Can you imagine what it is? Understand what the business wants. As a dev, you focus on a feature. As a good PM, you're looking how all those features come together and make a great software. And as an excellent PM, you have the business goals in mind and direct the software to meet those goals. I hope this gives you some valuable insights into what you might expect when transitioning from a dev role to a PM role. If you found this helpful, let me know the lessons you have learned and share your experience in the comments below. In the next weeks, I'm gonna make more content about shipping software in time and in budget, so subscribe so you don't miss out on new videos.